Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the SportsTech All-Stars podcast. We're bringing our series focused on the Indian sports ecosystem home. This is the final episode leading up to the launch of the report, which is probably out now already by the time you're listening to this. And to bring this episode, or bring the series home, I wanted to talk about the wider ecosystem of sports. Sports is not just about sports. We talk about sports in the context of entertainment and media, entertainment, gaming, sports, all goes together, usually from a fun perspective. When we look at a VC's MO, they will either go with sports, health, wellness, or sports, media, entertainment, gaming. Those are usually the two tracks that we see. And one such fund in the Indian ecosystem that is operating on the second track, closer to gaming than sports, I believe, but I'll let them clarify. I've got the founding GP of Lumikai Fund, Salone Sehgal, on the episode today. Welcome to the show, Salone.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Well, I want to leave it to you to tell us all about what Lumikai's actual MO is and not butcher it myself. But first, I want to know about you yourself and how you get to this position. You, of course, from your own profile that I've seen, have a pretty cool and storied background. But I'd love to hear from you in your own words. What has been your journey so far to setting up this fund?
Sure. Well, thank you so much. I'm Salone Sehgal. I'm founding general partner at Lumikai. We're actually India's first dedicated interactive media, gaming, and tech VC. We're seed stage fund. We manage more than about $75 million. And we are often first institution in, and we invest anywhere from seed to up to pre-series A. So our check sizes will range anywhere from as low as $200K going up to about $2 million. And we've been early investors in companies like Iloilo, Bombay Play, Wobble, Autoverse, Framer, Studio Sera, which are all, again, companies which are building across the various, I'd say, verticals of interactive media, gaming, and tech. And, our investor base is largely global. So we're backed by some of the world's largest media companies, gaming companies from Japan, South Korea, US, Europe. It's largely institutional capital, which is essentially looking to find category leaders at the India market. From my perspective, I've been in this industry for nearly 2 decades now. So I've been fortunate to see the industry from all sides of the table, like I call it. I've been an investor, I've been an entrepreneur, I've been an M&A banker. I grew up in India, but I spent about 12 years in Europe. So prior to Lumikai, I used to be with a fund called London Venture Partners, which is based out of the UK. And it was the world's first interactive media and gaming VC. And, the partners in the fund had a tremendous track record. They backed over 50 odd companies, which ended up delivering over $20 billion in shareholder value. Was fortunate enough to be part of the fund and really learn what best in class looks like. Prior to that, I was also a builder in Europe. I was a CEO and co-founder of a venture-backed gaming studio, which was building immersive social worlds. I'd say way before the metaverse became cool. And before that, I spent about first 6-7 years of my career in investment banking and private equity. I was with Morgan Stanley. I was with Barclays, also out of Europe. Was fortunate to see about $10 billion in M&A transactions. Covered the sector for a long time. And I guess circling back to more current times, moved back to India in 2019. And, 2020 was when Lumikai was birthed. It was a terrible year to launch a debut fund, but it was great for the industry. And, it's been nearly 5 years. We have seen north of 2,500 deals in the ecosystem. We have near 100% market coverage. And it's just been a pleasure to see the ecosystem evolve far faster than what we initially predicted.
Banker, builder, and now investor. That is a nice little journey that you set up for yourself, Salone. I mean, I could go on about your experience in London and your experience as a founder itself, for that we could easily fill up 30-40 minutes on that and probably lots more. But of course, I want to spend time today talking about your interest in the Indian ecosystem.
Okay.
So the jumping off point surely has to be what drove that decision when you have, obviously you're doing interesting work at this cool venture fund based out of London, great city, all of that. What made you jump into the Indian market?
So, while I was at the fund in Europe, I started to see a deal flow come from the India market, right? And, having seen the rise of markets like China, like Turkey, like Israel, it felt like the timing was right for a sector-focused strategy building for the India market. And if you were to, essentially take a step back, in 2020, India this venture capital cycle, I'd say, was just about a decade or a little bit more than a decade old. And mostly all the funds that had existed previous to that period were largely horizontal funds, right? Because you were still building category leaders across, let's say, horizontal industries. You had to get fintech, you had to get e-commerce, you had to lay out the building blocks of the digital internet ecosystem first. And at that point of time, we started to see liquidity come out from those businesses, right? And the next evolution of venture capital, typically in any market, is often vertical focused funds. And given the kind of inflection points that I was seeing from overseas, it made sense that India would not be immune to those kind of trends, right? Gaming is globally is larger than television. It's larger than sports media rights. It's larger than movies. It's larger than music. It's a $250 billion gorilla in the broader media and entertainment ecosystem. And it's largely driven and predicated by a few things. The first is the advent of mobile, which has made your smartphone as your primary medium of entertainment. The second has been a largely digital native, what I call a swipe before type generation, which has, grown up as wanting and desiring instant, immersive, interactive experiences. And then if you apply that lens to India, you kind of start to see where that makes sense, right? In 2018, 2019, we saw the geofication of the internet where data rates were slashed by 93%, right? An average Indian today consumes about 30 gigabytes of data a month, right? Your average smartphone ASP is now anywhere between $200 to $400, but these are very, very powerful smartphones which are able to withstand very powerful immersive experiences. 50% of India's population is under 25, and we have a 800 million smartphone user base. And I think more importantly, over the course of the last 2-3 years, we saw the advent of UPI, right, which is a unified payment interface, which essentially unlocked microtransactions. Right. So now when you put all of this together, there is like this perfect convergence of, new content, new media, and entertainment kind of converge all within a certain medium, which is essentially your device. And that led to a Cambrian explosion of sorts. Right. And so for us, as a thesis, looking at, let's say, media and entertainment, which is currently a $25 billion bucket, out of which half of it is old media, it's television, it's box office, it's print. But the other half, which is gaming, it's animation, VFX, it's digital media, it's tech, and which are being monetized by new age business models like in-app purchases, microtransactions, virtual gifting, tipping. Those became very interesting for us. And that's a $12 billion bucket. It's expected to hit $19 billion over the course of the next couple of years. And hence, as a fund, it made sense for us to vertically specialize and, having had experience in the global markets, came to India, collaborated with a group of on-ground specialists and, built a portfolio now of about 16 companies in the fund. Already had 2 exits at the moment in a short span of time. And, we believe that the next 10 years, it will look very different from the last 10 years, right? And that's kind of what predicated our thesis to invest in the market.
That's a hell of a Why India soundbite, Salone. You've given us. I was hoping to clip that into a short somewhere, but that's an amazing answer. Thank you so much. Including, I have to give you props for the tagline. Was it swipe before type? That has to be patented. I mean, you could tell that seasoned podcaster / event speaker. She's got her little quips as well. Fantastic. No, but I think the power of the story that you're talking about is the story that we're looking to convey to our audience, which is, most of it is outside of India, but which is why we're focusing on content from the Indian ecosystem, presenting it to the global audience. I mean, like I said, we lead with sports, but the intersection of sports and gaming is
absolutely
so important, and especially where you ended the monetization models that gaming is providing, not just sports, but commerce in general, media in general. Gaming has taught influencers how to monetize directly, and their users will pay and their followers will pay if they provide quality content. Fantastic. You mentioned a couple of exits already in a very short span of time. It's only been 4 or 5 years. Can you talk about maybe some of those or highlight some of the success stories that you've had within the fund?
Yeah, I think it's been it's been a really interesting journey for us because we started the fund, even we didn't know how deep the market was. So initially when we started the fund, it was for us finding product market fit. So, we told investors that, hey, this is going to be a slow burn market. Market's difficult. It's difficult to navigate. It's opaque. We need to parse through it. We need to find founders. So there were a few, I'd say, very clear decision points that we took while building the fund out. A lot of funds rely on inbound deal flow, right? About getting a warm intro or founders being referred to the investors. We kind of threw that model out. We said, we're building a fund for a new asset class. We need to go out there and we need to find our founders. We need to hunt for our living, in so to speak, right? If you want to, build the future, you've got to create your own luck in a certain way. And so for us, we created a strategy called Future Founders, which is us essentially building a proprietary database of about 250 product managers, leaders, PMs, game designers across all major media gaming companies which were present in India, and essentially just reaching out to them and building those kind of connections. And this is a list that we refresh all the time. The team kind of keeps active on this, and we have very active KPIs about how we track. So majority of our deals actually come from this strategy. So we're not resting upon a founder to reach out to us when they're ready to build. Actually, we're building those relationships even before they're ready to build, and we're planting the idea that, hey, these are some of the businesses, or what are you doing? We'd love to get to know you, so that when they are looking to build, we're actually the first port of call. And, that's a very fundamental way of how we source our deals.
It is like a venture studio model almost, but not quite taking it that far. You're seeding, as you mentioned, the idea for somebody who's working in a company in one of those profiles to say, hey, actually, if you're thinking about taking the jump, they've got your back a bit.
Absolutely. And those relationships are very helpful for us. And actually, 90% of our deals have actually come from that relationship, right? Because founders have seen us over time. They've interacted with us. We brainstorm with them. And eventually, our starting point with them when they come to pitch us in finance is, hey, it's not, hey, tell us about yourself. It's actually, hey, now you found your idea. We've built you. We've tracked you for like a couple of months. We've done ref checks. We've spoken to people in the ecosystem. So hence we're very prepared, and we have a theme in mind, right? We do bottom up and top down investing. So we kind of understand exactly what you're building. So when the founder comes to us, we're not starting with A, let's say we're starting with, S at that kind of, if we were to kind of say what that deal flow alphabetic looks like, we're actually quite advanced when we are looking and talking to those founders. And that's a very key part of our strategy of finding those founders. Once we find those founders, we've realized that capital is only one of the problems that a early stage, seed stage founder, especially in a new market, looks like. So, we devised what we call a 5-pillar framework for helping our portfolio founders, right? Predicated on, again, 5 things, whether it's funding, so we help them raise the next round of capital, whether it's distribution, whether they need connections with strategic partners, or whether they need unlock new markets. Those are things that we actively help them with, because we have a strategic network of investors who can often act as their distributor channel partners, or also, just helping them guide market entry into other markets. Hiring, especially for game-changing hiring, right? We won't do your software engineer hiring, but if you're looking to hire a very key C-level exec, or whether you're looking for a VP engineer, we'll kind of, roll up our sleeves and say, hey, let us help you find this resource, or if we cannot, can we put you in touch with other people who can help you find this resource? Another very key part, I think, of this building is performance coaching, right? Like, we do have a panel of performance coaches who work with founders as and when they feel the need to work. It could be very simple questions like, how do I manage culture? Or, I'm facing an imposter syndrome. Or, hey, how do I codify values in my business? Again, it's up to the founder to take this, but as a fund, we do kind of have that opportunity provided. And I think the last is almost around helping, whether it's product, whether it's, helping define what kind of initiatives the business needs to take, so it involves us helping them through that kind of life cycle of building and mapping what, after, let's say, a pre-seed round, what does the 100-day mark look like? Then after 100 days, what does the next journey look like? And what is the next milestone to your funding round, right? And you work backwards from there. If we do all of this well, the third is the company's scale. They find their product market fit, and they kind of are able to go further than they would have had they just been alone, right? So we kind of look at ourselves as saying, hey, we're the other co-founder. How do we service our founder, right? Like, so if we, while we're in the venture capital business, we look at it as a services business, right? Like, we service our LPs on one side and we service our founders on the other side. So how is it that we provide the best service possible to our two very key stakeholders? And, we've been fortunate that we have seen now a company like Ilo emerge, which is one of India's largest social entertainment platforms, come out from our portfolio. We have backed some great B2B SaaS companies. We have a business called Autoverse, which is essentially doing and redefining VR for the industrial workspace. So using VR for industrial worker safety training. And they work with now 25 global clients, including Shell and Philips. It's a complete DIY SaaS platform, which is also being built using a gaming game. So, everything that they build in crack in the VR game, they take it to the enterprise product. So they've done, multiplayer in VR, which helps the enterprise product. They've cracked, real-time 3D assets rendering, which they kind of transfer to their enterprise product. So if you're an employee in Shell Africa wanting to train with somebody in Shell US, that's enabled. And they've worked now across industries providing this kind of product. We've backed companies like a Wobble, which is a kids audio entertainment platform. We've backed a company like Studio Sira, which is building content for the India market, but it's mid-core. They're building gaming IPs. So that kind of helps us navigate the various, I'd say, verticals of this industry in a way which is focused, but yet, I guess, value additive in a way.
I'm going to guess, based on everything that you said, your team must be, 150, 200 people, somewhere in there?
I wish with a team of 9 trying to punch above our weight, to be honest.
Talk about punching above your weight. You're clearly taking on a lot. I thought that the approach is really unique. I haven't seen that, certainly from the typical VC use case of actually talking to, kind of poaching people who are in companies in a light way, but more importantly, giving them the opportunity and giving them the background to take on that risk. You covered quite a variety of opportunities that you have invested in, and that's a nice segue into my next question, which was, what are the areas within the ecosystem? Because clearly you have a thesis. And as you said, there are certain topics, themes, use cases, problems, whatever you want to call it, that you've identified that, hey, we want somebody to go and solve that. Some that you've already funded, perhaps, which you've mentioned. Maybe you could talk to some of the others that you're seeing coming up where there are gaps in the market that you still believe can be addressed.
Yeah, so we invest in 5 key verticals as a fund across the interactive media landscape. So we'll do content. So it's gaming companies building games for the global markets, but also gaming companies building games for the India market. Now, when it comes to building games, what we're looking for is a very unique, differentiated approach, especially with founders who are building for gaming, especially in gaming, right? Because in gaming, your biggest competition is boredom. And there is no problem solution framework that VCs love to apply when it comes to gaming, right? It's an entertainment product at the end of the day. Does the world need yet another Candy Crush? Probably not. So, there's no kind of unique framework analysis that one can do when we look at gaming. So for us, more important is to find founders who have a very unique insight or who found a very clear wedge, especially when it's building content businesses. Another vertical that we really like is platforms. It could be audio platforms, it could be social entertainment platforms, it could be gaming platforms. And we back across this ecosystem with some of our companies that I mentioned. The third category is tools, tech, infrastructure. So this could cover, it could be a tech stack for payments, for, let's say, enabling, blockchain gaming, for example. Or it could be a company like, we backed a company called Framer AI, which is building a creative video studio for highlighting, transcripting, captioning, and at the same time, monetization of videos only for global enterprises. So they work with the likes of, Acco, and they're part of the Brightco marketplace. They work with Sky News and, India Today, and a bunch of media publishers who have tremendous amount of inventory, which is actually video inventory, which is all long form, which is not being converted into short form and is not being monetized. So they essentially provide an end-to-end creative video solution infrastructure stack, which does that end-to-end. Lastly, we back companies which we call are building in the systems of play category. How do you take game mechanics and disrupt legacy industries? It could be edtech, it could be health tech, it could be, fashion, for example. So how do you take those game mechanics? Because now everything increasingly is immersive and it's interactive, especially if you want to reach a younger demographic, right? And it's mobile first. So for us, that is what is interesting for us, and while we see everybody talking is busy debating about AI taking over the world, I think the reality is that India's interactive entertainment industry is actually taking over wallets, right? So we see, virtual gifting, in-app purchases, live social gaming, which are going mainstream in India. right? And a very interesting stat that we cover is that gaming, which is a 3-year-old industry, is twice as big as Bollywood, and it's equal to cricket revenue. And those are two entrenched religions in India. And this is a 3-year-old industry. And that augurs well for companies who are, let's say, looking to build India first gaming, original IP in India, right? And we don't see that at all. India right now consumes only Western publishers or foreign publishers. And if you think back to the day of entertainment in India, right, we've seen this happen. If when you look at, let's say, pre-1990s, we only had Doordarshan. But 1990, satellite happened and we started getting American television beamed into our TVs, right? We saw the likes of Beverly Hills 90210, we saw Bold and the Beautiful, we saw Santa Barbara. But the first 5-6 years, there wasn't that much Indian content, right? It took time. And then Balaji came and Z came and SL came. And then the first kind of Indian programming evolved because they didn't have money or they didn't have resources, they didn't have the know-how. That's that phase in which we're consuming foreign content, but we still need India content, right? And if you now look at the entertainment palette, it is full of foreign content, but it also have a very large mass market. And that will play out in gaming as well, is our hypothesis. And then lastly, we see short form video, interactive video, we see influencers, sports tech, more and more industries monetizing via interactivity. So those are, I think, broad trends that I think are very interesting for the India market.
I think I heard or read somewhere rather that the Netflix CEO of one of the founders said that Netflix is competing with sleep, which I thought was a dangerous area to get into. I mean, at least competing with boredom is much more manageable. Sleep is like, that's a bit icky. But no, it's super interesting that the perspective is as wide as it is. I would be remiss to ask, because we haven't touched on this topic yet. And usually when you talk about gaming, esports, especially from a sports context, follows very naturally. I haven't heard you say it even once. And I think that's fair. We've gone through a hype cycle with esports. But I was in Riyadh a few months ago for the Esports World Cup towards the end of last year. And it feels like there is some air coming back in that balloon. Do you believe that? Is it a segment that you think will emerge? There's an elite premium professional category within the gaming world?
It already is. And, I am probably remiss in saying that, but it's still early days, right? If you look, gaming is actually nascent in India, right? It's a 3-year-old industry. It literally saw tailwinds from 2020. And that's when we really saw gaming become mainstream, right? That's when it became part of common parlance. Now, it's important to understand what makes the trajectory of an esports popular. For esports to succeed, gaming IP has to be popular. Now, India is a mobile-first market, so gaming on mobile had to unlock first. And that happened with the emergence of, let's say, PUBG in 2018, 2019, which then transformed into Battlegrounds Mobile India, where we saw Free Fire, we saw other mobile titles. So once IP took off, there is now a culture of people watching games for entertainment and also playing games as sports. And India, literally last year, esports became an official sport. It's actually legislated and managed under the Ministry of Sports. In it, right? Esports is also just this last year actually is now become an Olympic sport. Now that has led to the birth of esports athletes, creators, entertainers, the rise of tournaments and leagues. And in India we've got a large esports organizer and a company called Nodwin, which are taking that culture forward. But the journey is just beginning. Hence, as a result of which, do we see this become larger? Absolutely. Is this going to be a very key way for brands and media organizations to get to, let's say, youth mind share and attention share? 100%. Are there challenges from an esports perspective, from a venture capital perspective, right? Yes, there are, right? Because we've seen that journey of what has happened, at least in the global markets, right? Typically in esports, you have 4 very key stakeholders. You've got the IP holder, you've got the distributor, you've got the leagues, you've got the teams and the tournament organizers. And as you go through that waterfall, margins start to become slimmer and slimmer. So where does the maximum opportunity for a VC lie? It lies probably at the IP holder level or at the distributor level, right? So from a venture lens, I look at it from that perspective. But from a cultural lens, is esports important and is emerging? 100%. I cannot deny that in it.
And that's an interesting separation to make because, I mean, esports teams, whenever I've spoken to them, especially in the early days when esports was getting a bit more professionalized, the people who made money was in the teams.
Yeah.
But now, no longer. The teams really suffer. The monetization models are a challenge. They're all running academies or doing something of that sort. Yeah, but it's a
running profitably, like maybe
yeah,
two.
very few.
then probably, the very, very few teams, which actually only 2 in the world probably make money, right? And at the tournament league levels, margins are very slim, right? There's incredible power law, especially when it comes to teams as well, right? And maintaining teams is very expensive. That's why they have to kind of diversify their revenue streams. So I think those are all things, having seen the hype cycle of esports in 2015, 2017 in Europe, I am mindful of that when I'm investing, at least in the India market.
Yeah, which is essentially my question, because we've seen that curve, and now just because there's so much Saudi money coming into that ecosystem, will it be the jump start? And it's to be seen. But I mean, already the Esports World Cup, the Olympics has been delayed a bit. It was supposed to be earlier this year. It's already been pushed back. We'll see how that schedule goes, because that is not an endless or bottomless checkbook.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the ecosystem has to work. No, Salone, fantastic. Thank you so much. We've motored through this episode. I feel like I have barely got through my questions, but we've covered so much already. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective. I want to leave it to you to tell us what is next, what is coming up for Lumikai over 2025, the next 12 to 18 months. What can we look forward to?
We're going to be announcing a few deals. We have a new deal which is coming up very soon. We'll be announcing in this quarter, which is at the confluence of gaming, AI, and consumer religion tech, actually. So we're quite excited about that. We have portfolio company follow-on rounds that will be coming out soon as well. Lumikai is going to be represented at the Web Summit in Qatar, and GDC and SF and Gamescom in Cologne later this year. So it's going to be quite a year for us. We're quite excited and gearing up for what's ahead.
Rack up those miles, got to do it. Certainly. My final place to leave the show is where I always end it. I always want to know what is my guest's favorite sporting moment. We are a sports first podcast,
yes.
But of course I want to leave it open to you, however you want to answer it, whether it's from the esports world or something from the gaming world. Yeah, which direction would you like to take us?
The sports world. I used to watch a lot of football as a kid, and in my early 20s, I had the chance to live in Barcelona. I lived in Barcelona for 2 years, and a lot of my key memorable moment was actually being in Camp Nou, right? And this was 2011. I saw FC Barcelona play against Real Madrid. It was Supercopa, and Barca won 3-2. Messi scored 2 goals, and it was just incredible. And I used to actually love Barca as a club, so it was a childhood dream to be part of that. And it was just quite an environment. And you come out and there's fireworks and people on the streets, and there are like these parties which are ongoing, which go on till like pretty much next morning. So yeah, that was.
You mean the next day of the next morning, right? Like not the evening of the game, the next day.
Exactly.
The Spanish are a little bit, yeah.
Most people don't sleep, right? At night, like if you know Barcelona at all, like Barcelona doesn't sleep. So it was quite a
solid shout. And those historic moments in those historic stadiums, they always stay with you. So yeah, I feel like this conversation is going to stay with me. I don't need to take notes. AI will do that for me, but it was super informative and gave a great perspective on the gaming side of the Indian sports media landscape, and also the ancillary business that are formed outside of it. Thank you for sharing your perspective. If somebody was to get in touch with you, what is a good place to do that? Your LinkedIn
and Twitter? Yeah, absolutely. Very
fantastic.
Happy.
We'll put those links in the show notes. Thanks again for joining us.
Super. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that is a wrap for another episode and for the series. And go download that report, the India Sports Business and Tech Report. It will be out on our website and on our socials, presenting an overview of what is happening in the Indian ecosystem. And of course, we cover gaming because, like I said at the start, when we talk about sports as part of the media entertainment business, and gaming is a key pillar, if not the biggest pillar, arguably, within that segment. Next up, beyond the series, actually, Salone is interestingly a perfect segue into the next topic that we're going to be covering is women's sports. And there's so much from an investment perspective happening in the women's sports world. Women's sports rights are skyrocketing, team values are flying, and we're going to take a deep dive into that segment over the next month or so. Stay tuned for that. See you guys next week. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the SportsTech All-Stars podcast with Rohan Malhotra. If you like our show, let us know and leave a review. And if you want to know more about us, check out SportsTechX.com, where you can find our latest industry reports and updates. For a deeper dive into all things sports tech, check out our comprehensive database, SportsTechDB, at SportsTechDB.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media. You can find us at SportsTechX on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Join us next time for another insightful conversation with a leader in sports tech.